Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in Austin Eras are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on Austin Eras are not affiliated with CWM LLC. Today's episode is hosted by Mel Martin, Client Service Representative, and Adam Flagg, Managing Partner and Senior Wealth Advisor at Collective Advisors.
Welcome to Austin Eras, the podcast that unravels Austin's transformation into a 21st century boomtown and explores its potential future. Brought to you by Collective Advisors, Austin Eras takes you on a journey through the city's evolving landscape and rich history, offering insights into its dynamic past, present, and future.
Welcome to the Austin Era's first ever podcast. This is our introductory episode. My name is Adam Flagg, and I am host and creator of the show.
And my name is Mel Martin. I'm the producer and showrunner.
We are here to talk a little bit about the concept of the show, some of the things that we're going to be doing, some of the highlights, and we're going to circle around and share some clips as well. So we're gonna have some fun today, Mel. Let's talk a little bit about the name of the show. I think some people could interpret this a little bit differently than others. So Austin Eras.
Yeah, Austin Eras. Our tagline is unraveling the journey of Austin as a 21st century boomtown and its potential future. And so all of that kind of speaks a lot to the concept. We are going to be taking topics, some fun ones, maybe about tacos, drinks around town, cocktail bars, and more serious issues like transportation, affordability. So again, it's really meant to show you the changes of Austin, right, over time. We know, again, we're a 21st century boomtown, but there's been a lot going on even before that. And then looking to the future, we're a future-oriented, growth-oriented city. Where are we going next?
So a few months ago, I was out in Phoenix, and I was at a conference, the Financial Planning Association conference, and a colleague of mine, Jamie Hopkins, and I did a podcast together, and we're pulled out some clips for today to kind of go through. Jamie Hopkins is a well-known gentleman in the financial services industry that worked for Carson, where I also kind of work with, and he now is CEO. He's just appointed recently CEO of Bryn Mawr Trust out in the Philadelphia area. So he's staying in the banking space, not at the same company, but he has a very successful podcast called Framework. He's done many hundreds of episodes of this and done a lot of different other broadcasting things throughout his career. So we thought it would be very appropriate to have Jamie be a guest and kind of really pull out the right questions and right ideas behind this. So Mel, what are we going to be listening to in this first clip?
Yeah, so this first one, Jamie brings up Austin, right? The connection to Austin and why is the city a core part of the podcast. So I know you talked a little bit about that, and so we'll hear from y'all.
So the show's going to be a little bit about Austin, right? So why did that become this core part of the message you want to, and emotion probably that you want people to feel?
Yeah, I don't think it's even a little bit. I think it's a lot about Austin. And I think the passion I have for it is because we chose Austin. I can just say that growing up, I grew up in Iowa. I moved to Illinois after graduating from college. And my wife and I were going down a path where we were in one city. We went to another city for an opportunity. And we looked at each other and we said, I don't think we want to spend the rest of our lives here. So we looked all over the country. Mm-hmm. We looked at 6, 7, 8 cities, really wanted to find a place that we felt like was a good size, but not so mm-hmm. big, so unapproachable. We wanted to find a city that really had arts and culture and interesting things and really something we could grow with. So for me, I think Austin is just something that epitomizes the success that I've had and the experience that I've had, and I want to share that with everyone else, and I want them to experience what Austin's like so they too can have that success story for themselves.
Yeah, so one thing that I love that you brought up when you talked about why you and your wife chose Austin, you were looking for a city that you guys could grow with, and that really stood out to me. That was a huge soundbite in that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is what meant the most to us when we decided where we were going to go. Because if we looked at a few cities, I'll just share the cities actually that we looked at. We looked at Kansas City, we looked at Knoxville, Tennessee, we looked at Nashville, we looked at Denver, we looked at Colorado Springs, We even looked at Chicago. Being in Illinois, we looked at the interstate or the intrastate visit. But ultimately, Austin is where we fell, though I think my wife, in rewriting history, says that Denver was where she picked. So I must have railroaded her into Austin. I think we had an agreement at the time, but I think we're both very happy. We haven't looked back since that day in 2007 when we moved here.
Gosh. Okay, and so I've been here since 2014 now, so it'll be 10 years later this fall. And I actually moved down here kind of on a whim. My grandparents live down here. My older brother lives down here. So I've been visiting, quite a bit over the years. I visited once I turned 21, came to South by, had a good time, fell in love with the city. My brother had to warn me, it's not always like this. It's like, I don't care. I still love it. Loved the music, loved the food, really just kind of felt welcome here, even though this is a giant festival going on. I just kind of felt like I was right at home. And so that's kind of why I decided to move down here after college, and I've been here ever since.
Yes, so you moved from the Midwest as well.
Yeah, Indiana. Northwest Indiana. So I lived near Chicago.
Okay, so you definitely vouch for Austin over Chicago as well.
Oh, I love Chicago, though. I really do. I do say that Chicago is one of the greatest cities in the world in the summertime.
With terrible weather, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The winter weather is not fun.
When I left Illinois for Texas, I definitely was a little bit unsure of what my career, where I was going at the time. I went to school to be in broadcasting, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of a weird adjustment for me. So I actually, in high school, I worked at a radio station that was local to our high school, but it was much beyond that. You could actually hear the signal throughout the entire city of Des Moines, Iowa. And so I got very involved there. I started hosting a radio show, just was a DJ. We had alternative rock music back in the day, so we could talk trivia on alternative rock music all day long, and I'd have a fun time there. But I also hosted a sports talk show and did play-by-play for football and basketball and various other things. And so I had a passion for broadcasting. Went to school, actually had a scholarship to go to school for it, and did a lot of things. I worked for ESPN Radio. I worked for an NBC TV affiliate. I worked for newspapers. And I got done with college and just decided that wasn't the path I was going to go. But this is really fun doing the podcast and coming back into this. It's kind of like getting to revisit and really get back into the skills I did have in broadcasting back in the show. So I hope you guys can find that in your hearts to give it a listen and tell me any criticisms or any compliments you have. But I really feel like there's something that I can add here, and I think we both can add to the show just with our past experience.
Yeah. Well, and we talked a little bit, about the concept, how, we're doing some softer, fun topics and, some heavier topics, right? And one of the things I know that Jamie kind of talked to you about is, our concept, the past colors our future, right? We kind of need to know our history. And he asked you, what are some of the positive and negatives of the current state of Austin?
Every person you talk to in Austin thinks that it was the best when they moved there. And maybe that's every city, but you go, hey, I moved there in 2007. 2007 was the peak year, and it's all gone downhill from there. So you have to kind of take a step back and go, well, what's really happening? Can we look at this without the rose-colored glasses of, like, what my experience has been? And I think what you find is that the city does have some great things, and they've had some evolution that's really been awesome. I mean, think about South by Southwest. Mm-hmm. That started in the late 1980s. A couple of young people that said, hey, let's go make this festival happen. College kids can come in during their spring break, and, we'll just have some awesome music. And it's evolved into, education, into interactive, into film. It's become a place where everyone in the world wants to come in March. And so, there's great things, and I think the culture and the way that people feel when they come to the city and the arts and entertainment is what's the leader. I think that's what brings people in and gets them excited. I think then the business experience and understanding that our governors, whether you like some of them or don't like some of them, they all have done a pretty good job at bringing in more business to the state, and specifically Austin. And so we've seen all that. But with that, I think the biggest challenge is always growth. Mm-hmm. And growth is such a tough thing because I think there's some people who go, hey, I don't want it to grow because I like it the way it is. But growth is inevitable. And when you think about growth, it becomes something that, there's problems. So, transportation's an issue. We've had issues with city policies and ordinances. We've had things that just haven't necessarily gone the way that we want them to. But we still love the place, and we still want a better future. So this podcast is really about addressing those things, and not necessarily with a heavy opinion one way or the other, but just going, hey, well, what does the future look like? How can we make this better? What can we do right now to intervene and make this the city that we love and like, and we want to be here the rest of our lives?
So one of the parts of that clip I really wanted to bring up was just the fact that every person I talked to thinks that the year they moved here, the month they moved here, was the greatest that Austin has ever been. And I think, tend to have that nostalgia where we believe that the past is always greater than the future. And I want to explore that and kind of turn that concept on its head in this podcast, because I think there's a lot of things that are getting better and better and better within the city. But there's lots of things that are problematic too. I think we still love this place. We still want to have a better future. We want to address those things. So, Mel, what does the future look like, and how are we going to address that in that podcast?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big questions that we kind of keep going back to, whether you've moved here or you're a native Austinite, we're born and raised, right? It was best when you were in elementary school, or it's best when I was at Austin High down the street, right? What's going to keep you in Austin over the next 10 years, right? Change is a double-edged sword. It's good, bad, ugly. We got to take it all. It's tough. It's inevitable, though. And so exploring what's going to keep people in Austin over the next 10 years. And that's going to look different to everybody, but kind of exploring that through different lenses and different topics. And so, that's going to be, we're talking about the past, the present, and the future. That's going to be touched on in all three of those types of episodes.
Yeah, I think the city at the heart of this podcast is what this love letter is about, essentially. This is a love letter to the city of the things we really enjoy, why we're passionate about it, and why we're doing this podcast. So I personally created this podcast. I've been thinking about it for a number of years. And to me, the biggest thing is that this city's truly great. It's been great for the last number of years, but may not stay, like you're saying, Mel. And I definitely think I have my concerns. I want to go, am I going to be here when I'm 65 years old? Am I going to retire to Austin, Texas? Am I going to stay here? Or what's going to keep me here? So that's, I think, where this podcast is not only exploring all these things, but really thinking about how we can continue to think about these ideas into making the city better going forward.
Yeah, and then of course that goes back to our listeners, keeping them informed and, getting on their level in terms of how they can get engaged in certain topics and issues. So that's going to be a big part of it as well, is, bringing in these people who are going to talk about the past, present, and future. And we want y'all to be engaged with that, and we want you to take something away from that.
And an informed, knowledgeable citizen is far better than an ignorant one. Yep. So I hope that this will be our duty as in civics, is to do this podcast and help you guys.
Yep. The next thing that you kind of talked with, and actually I think Jamie brought it up, and this is something that we are going to plan to ask, kind of a standard question that we're going to ask every single time. Either your first Austin memory or your favorite Austin memory. So I think Jamie brought it up to you. So we're going to hear what you said as well as what Jamie said, because he's visited as well. So we'll hear that.
Do you actually have a first Austin memory? Very first one. So it might have been before you moved there too, right? But what's that first memory?
I remember visiting Austin a couple times. As my parents had some friends that were up in Iowa with us. They worked for Emerson and then moved down to Texas and back and forth. So I definitely visited a couple times in my teenage years. Mm-hmm. I think my first Austin memory is this. My wife and I got in cars and drove from Illinois to Texas. I remember it was June 30th, 2007. And I remember arriving in the city, and the air conditioning had gone out on the truck that I was driving. I don't drive trucks. I happen to have a truck briefly, and I'll tell you, I had a dog on my lap, and we're driving in the city, and I turn on, and there's sports talk radio.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to it, and I go, what? Is that guy speaking in English? And he had such a thick Texas accent that was my first Austin experience, is going, wow, is everyone going to talk like this? And since getting there, there's stronger accents, there's weaker accents, there's some stuff in between. But that was my first real Austin memory, was, wow, this is a different place. This is something that I'm not used to, and I'm either going to have to figure it out or have to get out. And I figured it out. And that's how I feel about the city. I think it definitely... You want to jump in full feet.
Yeah. My first Austin memory was I was actually at a conference in San Antonio. And I don't forget what year this was, though, but I'm sure some of your listeners will know. You might even remember it because you would have been there then too. And USC was playing at Texas, night game, probably in the 2013 to 15 range.
Sounds right.
And the main thing I remember from the game, though, is Texas blocks a field goal and returns it for a touchdown in that game, which obviously you could figure out which game that was because there's not a lot of those. But, seeing a place erupt after that, because that is a game-changing, like, just phenomenal thing, and you just have this massive stadium of people that just erupts into excitement, and just such a beautiful thing to see when you can be part of something like that. And it was funny, we literally took a cab all the way from San Antonio to Austin, which is a bit of a trip, and then paid that person to stay there and drive us back after the game. And it was a blast, but we were down there for a conference, saw the tickets, got them right outside, and had a wonderful time there as part of it.
That was great. So it was good hearing Jamie's voice and hearing him talk about his visit to Austin. I don't think any memory of Austin any memory of Texas could really ignore football in some form or fashion. Football is everywhere in this state. You could ignore it, but I remember actually when I first moved to Austin watching Friday Night Lights.
Oh, yeah. And it was filmed down here, too.
They filmed the movie and the whole series. The series here in Austin specifically, I had a good friend that was actually one of the extras on that show. He gave me a lot of inside information. And one time, my wife and I were at lunch. We were sitting down at this table eating some tacos. I look over, my friend's there, and he said, "Hey, I want you to introduce you to my friend Taylor." And I was like, "I don't know. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Nice to see you." My wife and I were focused on having our date. It turned out to be Taylor Kitsch from the show. He was just eating lunch with his buddy, who he was the extra for. So, that's an Austin memory for sure. But Mel, tell me about your favorite Austin memory.
Yeah, so my favorite is I used to work downtown. One time after work, I was walking to my parking garage, and I heard some music, and it sounded like The Killers, one of my favorite bands. And I was like, okay, awesome. Someone's playing a cover somewhere. There's always people playing music everywhere. And, just bobbing along, walking along. Then I realized they sound really good. It's like they kind of, really sound like The Killers. And I see people looking up, and then I see people climbing a fire escape. So, of course, I start climbing the fire escape. And we notice that The Killers are on top of a roof, the McGarrett Jesse building. I think it's at Colorado and 6, doing a sound check. So this was in between, I think it was 2017. It was in between the 2 weekends of ACL Festival. So a lot of times, they're playing other shows either in the Texas area or just around town. And yeah, they were doing their sound check just at, 5 o'clock on a weekday. And they saw all of us, I don't know, there's 15, 20 of us on the fire escape watching them. They shouted out to us, hey, what song should we do next? So, of course, we did all these things that I've done because that has a good kind of call and response to it. So, yeah, we stood up there, watched them finish their sound check, climbed through the window, went down the elevator, and made my way home. It was just kind of like quintessential Austin, right? The music side of it, just very impromptu, just kind of went with the flow of things. And it was just awesome. It's one thing that I will never, ever forget.
I love it. And I'm excited to hear all of our guests answer these questions too. I feel like everyone's kind of got a secret story behind some of the magic that Austin brings. Austin's interesting because you come visit this place and it's not like there's a ton of museums. It's not like there's a ton of hey, you got to check this off your bucket list. If there are, it's more like a happy hour spot or a restaurant spot or just a place to kind of hang out. That's unique. I don't think very many cities can say that they're selling people on their vibe more than they are on the things that you check off your list. And Austin does that really well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, we definitely have different pockets of bars and shops and stores and everything that people can explore. And so it's really great to, see those evolve as well. Again, the good and the bad that goes along with that growth. And so it's awesome to see.
It is. So I think the question everyone's asking themselves listening to this is, why should I keep listening to this? What's the main reason you should listen to our new podcast? What do you think, Mel?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I know this is kind of a generic word, but it's going to be fun. Like, we're just going to have a good time. And we want it to be informative. I touched on that a little bit, earlier. Again, whether we're talking about tacos or transportation, we want to inform y'all, and we want you guys to be engaged, right? We want to hear from you. We'll have our email where you can send in questions or suggestions on topics or co-hosts or guests or anything like that. And so, we want you to listen because you love the city. You want to know more about it. Maybe you want to know something about a specific topic in the past when you weren't around, and you want to see where the city is going, right? Like you love the city and you want to be a part of it, and this is one way that you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a long time in the last I moved here in 2007, building out connections in the city and really meeting people and getting to know all the people that make the magic work behind the scenes. So this podcast is about getting you behind the scenes too, learning from people. I'm sure I'm going to learn a whole lot that I don't know. Constantly things are changing, and we'll try to keep this as current and as modern as we can and really get great speakers and great people on here. So really engagement's what we're looking to do in this podcast. Is we hope you come for an episode about tacos and stay for an episode about transportation, like Mel said. So it's a way, I think, to get more well-rounded, and those people that really care about the city, maybe some ways to inspire others in terms of what they can do next to make this a city that lasts, that lasts the distance, that goes the distance, and really will be a great boomtown, not just right now, but for the next couple hundred years.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's it for today. I can't wait to have you guys back for our first official episode, and we'll put out some more things on that soon. Check us out at AustinErasPodcast.com, and we also have an Instagram handle, Austin Eras Podcast.
Calling all Austin business professionals and community leaders. Revitalize your after-work plans, and let's kick off a new tradition with the Austin Social Circuit. Join us for an evening of networking, great food and drinks, and even better company. Expand your circle, enjoy a laid-back vibe, and connect with like-minded Austinites. It's all happening the first Thursday of each month, with locations alternating between North and South Austin to keep things exciting. This initiative is powered by Collective Advisors. Find out the location of our next gathering and learn more by following Collective Advisors on Instagram and LinkedIn. Bring a friend, share the fun, and strengthen our Central Texas community. See you there, Austin.